Hello, hello. It's Tuesday at noon. I am talking to a wonderful, dear woman named Deb, who I bet many of you know. We met a couple years ago at one of the Anna Ono Cancerland fashion shows and have kind of stayed in touch via social media, which is so wonderful. I know people rag on social media a lot, but I've met so many awesome friends and people. Oh, you're already here. All right, awesome. Let's see if we can get this going. Deb, sent you an invite. Let's see if it's gonna work. All right.
Hello, hello.
Hello. It's great to see you. Thank you for
Likewise.
making the time work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was just saying that we met a few years ago at the Anna Ono Cancerland fashion show. And
Yeah.
then social media, which everybody rags on, kept us in touch, but I love it so much. I think it's been like one of the major ways that I've met women in our community and formed like so many awesome new friendships. One of them is you. And I would love to have you just do like a quick intro. You sent me such an amazing bio, and I'm going to post most of it in the captions because I was like, holy shit, we've talked a bunch of times and I didn't know half of that.
Yeah. I would say that I'm a doer of many things. Yeah. So I, first and foremost, have a travel company that I started long before I ever got cancer. And shortly before I got cancer, I actually decided that I wanted to focus in on wellness. So now everything that I do has some tangent of wellness attached to it. So I work with a few charities, such as the Annie Parker Foundation, Breast Cancer Support Fund. These are both up here in Canada. And then I also work with our Lymphedema Association of Ontario. And then by chance, you know, as things happen, I met a fellow Lymphie, as I have lymphedema secondary, due to my breast cancer surgery, and was going to get eyeglasses of all things, and sat next to this lovely lady who I then learned was also doing work with Gilda's Club Greater Toronto here in Toronto, and we were doing the same thing. We were talking about lymphedema with cancer patients.
Yeah.
And so we went, maybe we should do something together. So we actually created this new company called Conversationally, Thriving with Lymphedema. And so that has become my other passion piece, is really working on that. So between that and the Annie Parker Foundation, which I am the marketing manager there, and my own company, that is where I'm trying to bring everything together and trying to, you know, maintain these relationships with amazing women like yourself who really want to showcase what they're doing after their cancer, what they're doing with their lives, because cancer doesn't have to define our life. We can make it whatever we want it to be, you know, and I think reminding people that we have choice has always been paramount in whatever I do, because it's what I give myself. I give myself the opportunity for choice. Do I want to do this? Do I not want to do this? Of course, I feel forced sometimes.
Yeah.
But I've crafted something that I think I'm pretty proud of. You know, I've done a lot of jobs in the past where I've been a teacher at an international travel school. The list goes on and on and on, because I just enjoy working. I enjoy giving back. I enjoy doing all of those things. So that is, you know, the short nugget of my long story.
Yeah, no, I loved it. I actually really enjoyed reading your bio. I thought it painted such a full picture of all of the things you do outside, and like the way that you've woven all these different things you're passionate about into a way that promotes advocacy and giving back to the breast cancer community. And it's so awesome. I'm like particularly interested because we didn't talk too much about it, but the idea of, you know, when I first started thinking about Brilliantly, I talked to a woman who was in rural Arkansas, and she was talking about how few women she knew locally, how difficult it was to find people to talk to, all these things. And I thought, okay, we need to be doing things that are agnostic of geography. And so most of what I do is online, but I love that you've been talking about incorporating travel and like going to places that are underserved. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so, you know, one of the amazing people that, you know, is the connector for us, Dana, is, you know, the owner and creator of Anna Ono. And ironically, her products are made in Colombia, which is a country that I actually do a lot of work in as well. And so we've been looking at extending a medical conference that happens there annually with my breast cancer surgeon, who happens to be Colombian, and reaching a greater community there in Colombia. So taking a trip, doing a retreat type of focused trip, but also getting a medical education on the back end. And then also having this awesome opportunity to be able to go and actually do outreach with people who've never had the support. You know, we go to countries where maybe it's a bit more macho. You know, there is a male element where the woman doesn't get the support that she needs. You know, and being able to really see those opportunities in countries, but have the interaction, because just like you said, someone who's in a rural area does not have the opportunity to have the services we might have in a major city, or the connection just with people.
Right.
You know, and we've learned in these last 2 years of COVID, we don't get the chance to talk to a lot of people in a waiting room anymore, right? So those opportunities of connection have been limited. So as we transition back into something that is a bit more normal, we will look at more opportunities to give back in the places that we travel to. So right now I'm focusing in on Portugal, where we'll be visiting another breast cancer sister there. And, you know, just really connecting with those people on the ground, because I think we feel very insular when we're in our own countries. And we think, oh, nobody else could be dealing with what I'm dealing with. And then you find out, oh, they have that same issue there, or they've had success with getting more help in another country. And that facilitation of social media has been huge. But now we're able to translate it back into something that we can physically go and do, because we know that's so important. So that's a big tenet of what I do, in a lot of the things that I do. And if I can transition and partner with different people to be able to bring either their products, their goods to people who don't have any awareness about them, but to just to be able to build that self-care program and that regime for people, sometimes it takes that in-person moment to step away from the busyness of life to be able to go, oh, okay, I could do something here. And I didn't realize I ever had the opportunity to do something that was in another country.
Yeah, it's so awesome. I love what you said too. You know, if you're even if your doctor's a woman, I think we have this, like, our doctor is going to tell us everything we need to know, especially in the beginning. You just don't know how much you don't know, and how hungry you're going to be for human connection, and to feel less isolated, and to know people who are having the same experience. And that's from like diagnosis through life, especially if you're dealing with something like lymphedema. And, you know, there's all kinds of long-term side effects and consequences that we're all dealing with from these surgeries. And I just love that you're sort of approaching it from this hybrid physician and patient education opportunity. And I think that's huge for doctors to say, oh, this was something that no one ever actually told me they were struggling with. And then their patients are like, yeah, I have that, and we're going to go meet in a group and talk about it and feel better.
Exactly. And that's what we're doing conversationally. You know, we've been able to meet with some of, you know, the top practitioners here in our own country, but our global reach that we've already achieved with what we're doing with Conversationally, I think sometimes even surprises us, because we've been able to connect with people who are also doing the same in their countries. So that network has already been built, but the education of our practitioners is just such an awesome thing to be able to tap into and be able to say, hey, you want factual? Here's factual. I can give you the real grist of what is going on and what you really need to be learning about, instead of just going, oh yeah, I learned in a textbook and this is what I'm going to apply to you, and one size does not fit all. You know, the generic that we get when we're diagnosed and we go through all the process, you know, learning as we learn more about genetic studies and what we're getting information there. With lymphedema especially, most people don't understand when we've got primary and secondary lymphedema. We've got opportunities where people have genetic anomalies that actually create lymphatic issues in their bodies.
Wow.
And that is a huge problem. You know, one of the things, we have one of our favorite, Lymphie Strong, if you look her up on Instagram, is amazing, and she's built a beautiful network. But she was telling us that, you know, the only way they finally diagnosed her with lymphedema was because she has this rare condition where she has extra rows of eyelashes.
Oh, you told me about this, right?
What doctor looks at your eyeballs? You know, besides the optician, there aren't too many doctors that are looking in and going, oh, I see extra rows of eyelashes, there might be something here. So, you know, spreading that information, having that connection, but we need to be able to do it this way, you know, having an actual conversation. And I think that's why we really wanted to call our company Conversationally. We spell it incorrectly. So we make sure that it's, you know, everyone is welcome. So we have men, we have women, we have everything in between. And, you know, I think it is one of those things where we're numb when we're getting those diagnoses, right? It's not all filtering in. And we also forget that we have the right to ask. We forget to empower ourselves sometimes, that we're the advocate for ourselves. And so, you know, if we find out, oh, hey, there's a question I could ask, next time I go, I'm going to ask that question because I didn't know.
Right.
So,
yeah, Arena just said, wow, I've never heard of this. And I think that that's exactly what you're saying. Is like, what is so helpful about social media and people who are sharing stories, and especially feeds like yours where you're showcasing a number of other people's experience. You're like,
yeah,
oh, shit, that happened to me, or maybe I'm at risk for that, or I have that eyelash thing. What does that mean if I have surgery? I think the information, you know, like the stories of the people you've shared, I've learned so much about how, you know, I of course know what lymphedema is, but like how it manifests and how people get over it and what are the ways they're going to live their life around it, where it's not defining their everyday action. It's so, you know, and I hate the word inspiring. I'm tired of us like,
I know.
being like, you know what, I don't want to be inspiring, and I don't think people have to be
exactly.
either. But it is, it's when if you're feeling low and you're seeing examples of people who are going through an experience that might be similar in some way and they're doing it well, you're like, I can do that too.
Yeah, and I think that's the one thing that people forget. I see community is so, so vital. Absolutely, it is vital. And even if you're a very insular person and you don't feel like you can be around lots of people physically, social media does provide us that opportunity to just poke in when you want to, right? And I think that's the great thing, is being able to deliver messages that are factual. Right? We see lots of stuff that's out there, and we know that there's always going to be bad information with the good. But if you're trusting sources who are talking authentically, who are saying, look, here I am with my sleeve on, trying to be compliant, you know, it's one of those things. But I'm honest. I have never professed I am 100% good at being compliant. It's hard. It's not easy. Some days, there are days you're like, why is this my life? Right? And I think whatever we're going through, being thankful that we get to wake up every day and see the sky and be able to speak are wonderful things. You know, I have a friend who's going through, I think he's halfway through his 3rd year of living with ALS. And understanding what things can be taken away from us and being thankful for what we've got and what we can do with it. And making sure that we're empowering others in the process of empowering ourselves. I think that's a huge part. That's a huge part of community. I know absolutely no one is 100% compliant. It's really hard to be 100% compliant unless someone's monitoring you all the time. But it is one of those things where you just kind of go, okay, I learned this. I've learned some knowledge. Can I share it? Even if it's with one person. My personal, you know, advice to myself is always, if I've learned something, pass it on. Because it does me no good to just hold on to it and never share it with anybody else. And it could help one person or it could help millions of people. You never know, right?
Right.
And I think that's what we find, especially with our breast cancer community. We see this happening often, where little groups are coming together that are those little niches, you know, depending on what type of breast cancer you have, whether you're a pre-vivor or a survivor or a thriver. I don't call myself a survivor because I don't feel I've survived this yet. I'm a thriver. I'm living with it. I don't want to, you know, ever demean or challenge anybody on their own titles. But I think for me, that's my personal is thriver. I want to thrive with everything that I've got because I want to tell someone else they can do it, you know. And that's why these trips that I organize, people are often really shocked. They're like, you travel and you do all this and you know, you've just gone and hiked all day and I have asthma, I have a few other health issues. I don't let that hinder me as much as I can because I want to experience as much life as I can, and I want others to do the same. Yeah. I think we we get locked up in that whole thing. I have a little sign on my board in front of me here that says, hey, you, when life gets loud, listen to yourself. Love you. People are often afraid to be, with themselves sometimes, right? That's a very tricky spot to be because we're dealing with so much. But we absolutely know that we're not alone, even though we think we are, right? There's always going to be someone else who has something similar to you that you can relate to. It's just how we're able to reach them.
Yeah. And I think, as you were talking, I was thinking about, I ran into someone out in the world who was like, oh, you're Kristen from Brilliantly. And I was like, oh, I don't know you. Like we think there's all of these people who are really active and we see them and we hear each other and we know each other's stories. And I didn't know this woman. And I said, what's your handle? And she said, oh, I have a completely blank Instagram profile. But when I got diagnosed with breast cancer, I joined that I follow a bunch of accounts because it just helps me feel better. And I think like there must be so many people who we don't know about, like there's obviously there's groups in all of our communities that we engage with, that we talk to, that we know about, that we look to for information. But there's so many people who are sort of looking to people like you and wanting to understand, okay, I have lymphedema. How do I travel? What is the protocol? What are the guidelines? How do I make myself feel the best I possibly can so I can live my life? And I think the information and content you're putting out is so important and actionable. There's a lot of like self-care, like, I have a lot of feelings about the language around breast cancer and cancer in general, and the language around self-care. It's like, it's not all about like bubble baths and a glass of wine. It's about like doing the hard work, doing the research, understanding what you need to do to feel better. And sometimes that's like maybe being a little more uncomfortable before you're comfortable. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's the hard part for people to embrace, is that it might be painful and awkward to get better. Right? Yep. To be in a better mindset, to be in a better place physically, to be in those spots we want to get to. If anybody's ever gone and done a big heavy duty workout, when they announce you got to do burpees, you're like, oh, please, no. Yeah. You're like, those are the exercises I hate. Not because I'm not capable completely of doing them, but how I'm going to feel while I'm going through it is awkward and uncomfortable, and I'm self-conscious, and I'm all of those things that I can then translate over into my experience with breast cancer, with lymphedema, and go, yeah, no, I don't want to do it, but I might have to because I want to get to the other side. I want to get to a place where that's not a hindrance to me. There's always things we're not in control of. We know that's just a given, but how can you work around them? It's kind of like that, think like a creature outside who's trying to burrow in and get into something. How did they do? We had a raccoon that came into the backyard the other night. He was determined to try and find the bloody dog treats we had outside for the dog next door. We don't even have a dog. Right. We treat the dog next door, right? And it is ridiculous that this creature found its way around, under, on top. Sometimes you have to do that too. Sometimes you have to find that best path that gets you to that answer or that resolution or that fix that you're looking for. But I think community is that really huge part of it. And and I said this earlier, if you're very insular, if you don't feel like socializing with other people, that's okay. Mm-hmm. But know that there's resources out there if you just look, if you just search very easily. I mean, we know we have people who don't have access to internet, right? So then it's word of mouth. But that means you have to empower yourself to ask a question. Hey, has anybody had this? Hey, does anybody know about this? Because you'd be surprised how many people we don't necessarily openly talk about our family histories. Right. But you'd be surprised once you start the conversation what ends up happening. And this story develops and you see so much more information that you had no idea. Just like you just said. You had a follower who said, hey, you're that person. And you had no idea, because it's really hard on social media for us to keep track of everybody, right? Yeah. We'd love to, but it's really hard. I think about someone like J-Lo. Yeah, do you think she's replying to all the messages about Ben's hand on her butt again, however many years later? Probably not. Right. But when we know we can reach out to somebody and we can send them a message and we can say, hey, this is what's going on. Can you help me? Can you suggest something? And never ever feel afraid to contact me. I may be delayed in replying, but I am always open to try and help however I can, because that's a great thing about building a great community and network, is that there's going to be somebody out there who I can connect you with, who is
Right.
going to have an issue that you have, that we can say, hey, here's an opportunity. We know that things are drastically different between the US and Canada. We see lots of differences. A lot of our patients go down to the US to go for surgeries, because in Canada we don't have a lot of surgeons that do lymphatic surgeries.
Mhm.
But when it comes to breast cancer, you know, we have great places here. We have great places around the world. People just know how to connect to them. And the
Right.
internet is that pathway, right? And I think that's the challenge for some. When you look in rural places, they may not have the internet. So that's why I say, talking to people that you never thought you'd have a conversation about that particular topic. Breast cancer is not always the easiest one to talk about, but, you know, it is an introduction, shall we say.
Right.
You start
Yeah.
with a little tiny seed and see where it grows, because you never know. They might say, hey, I don't know anything about it, but I have a cousin, a friend, my mother, my aunt, whatever. Sometimes we also think that, oh, it's just a very insular female thing. And we know that it's not, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, stepping outside that boundary even and going, oh, hey, this is something that anyone could get, really. Percentages are different, but we know that it's not just sex dependent on female, right? It is one of those things that historically people were shamed for,
Yeah.
right? It was something that we weren't allowed to talk about, and now we're trying to empower everyone to be able to talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think to that point, it's still, I think men who have it have a hard time talking about it, because
Yeah,
it's been branded as something that is specifically
yeah,
female, and that's, you know, not
yeah,
true and unfair. And, you know, we all want to be resources and advocates for anyone who's affected by it.
yeah.
And, you know, giving people permission to tell their stories is the first place to start.
Absolutely. And allowing them to tell their story, not to take it over, not to suddenly say, oh yeah, I know exactly, because we're not that other person.
Right.
Every body has a body, right? And that word is sometimes, you know, counterintuitive when we put it into a conversation, or when we're talking to a doctor and they say, well, everybody has this. And I'm like, but I'm not everybody.
Right. I mean,
So therefore, I might be different, and therefore I might be having a different issue. I know myself, I had an issue with my radio oncologist, and she tried to tell me that all of the side effects that I've been having since my treatment couldn't be attached to my radiation. Talk to other doctors, and they're like, absolutely it could be. So,
yeah.
you know, it's also feeling comfortable enough to ask outside of that narrow window of people you might have as your contacts, and expanding it. And that's where, you know, doing what we're doing right now. We're having a conversation. We're talking about this stuff, and someone might go, oh, I never thought of that.
Right.
Oh, maybe I should ask somebody else, instead of just thinking we also know everything.
Right.
You know, we can go on the internet and look up Dr. Google and find God knows what out there. Maybe we need to, you know, stop doing that as well, because there's some great sites that have great information, but we can get lost down the rabbit hole very easily. And even with stories and people we connect with online, you know, just temper it and make sure that you're really sussing out someone, if that's the right term, and making sure that we are, you know, looking at their entire bio. Like if you look at someone and they say in their little intro, I do all this stuff, go through their feed.
Right.
Actually look to see if they are emulating what you want to see.
Right.
Because, you know, compliancy, especially for us with lymphedema, I've seen lots of people in my feeds that are definitely not compliant people, or at least too worried about getting the Instagram shot. And you kind of going, well, are they really compliant? Because I'm not really sure, and I don't know if that's the person I want to follow for guidance.
Right. Yeah, I think, you know, to your point, there's so much out there. There's so much valuable information. There's people who are sharing their stories, but to always fact check, talk to your doctors. Don't be afraid to ask questions. You know, look, if someone says something that you were like, oh my God, I've never heard of that, look it up, do some research. And
Yeah.
that, there are access issues, of course. But, talking to trusted medical people, your advisors, whoever it is, I think this is just such a good place to start. And, to that end, what's the best way for people to follow along, stay in touch with you, hear about the programs you're doing? I know you had emailed me one that was like a call for submissions, which I'll include in the caption too.
So that is our Annie Parker Foundation second act. It is called STARS, Survivors Telling a Real Story. So we are still looking to fill a few more spots for speakers. We're doing a panel of 8 for people who identify as a woman. And we are, going to be having that event on August 21st. It'll be at 7 p.m. Eastern. So you can go to the AnnieParkerFoundation.com to look up all the details for that. And then we are heading into some more great panels. We just did a panel, and my partner, Bisa Dobson, is finishing editing the video of our lovely panel we had for Black women with lymphedema. And that should be up today or tomorrow on our feed, on our YouTube channel. And that's Conversationally spelled incorrectly. So it's ConversationlyTwl. You can find that on Instagram, and we are the same on .com on the web.
And then also?
YouTube as well. Okay, and then myself, I am Travelicious D. You can follow me here on Instagram. My travel stuff is on Aya Life Co. So AYALIFECO. And you can find me on Facebook. Our Conversationally is also on Facebook as well, so you can follow along there. And I have probably a bunch of trips I'm organizing for next year because unfortunately COVID has kind of put a bit of hinky into some of my stuff, but I am working on a retreat up here in Canada, hopefully in Old Quebec City. And if all things happen, it will probably be in November or early December. And it will be a wellness retreat for cancer survivors and lymphedema thrivers. And that will probably be for just a weekend, a 3 or 4 day opportunity. So I encourage everybody to follow me because that one will be really juicy. And I have been working on a wellness specialist program with Organic Spa Magazine, and I'm thankful to be a contributor there. So that program's coming out shortly as well. So stay tuned and follow me on Travelicious D because that's probably where I'll repost everything. So
awesome. That's super helpful. I'll tag you. We put the link in bio to the call for submissions already. And I just pulled up the Conversationally Thriving on Facebook. So we'll do a bunch of links to your platforms. And thank you so much for the time today and all of your amazing
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Now I'm going to go off and learn Italian.
All right, do it. Enjoy. Have a wonderful day.
All right. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.